Welcome, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Divided, Survived, and Thriving. It's where I get to have candid chats with divorcees about turning a painful process of divorce into a positive force in their life. Today's guest is a spiritual and soulful and beautiful, talented writer and cook, Mira Manek. And for those of you who don't know me and are new to this episode or show, my name is Lila Aitken Ali, and I'm a divorcee, a divorce coach, and the founder of Split.fyi, a divorce community full of resources and support. Mira Manek, who is here with me today, has published two books. The first was in 2017 called Saffron Soul, and inspired by the foods that from her ancestry, her parents, her mother and her grandmother. And the latest book called Pranya, speaks of Ayurvedic rituals and for happiness. And it's amazing. And it's my kind of go-to Bible right here. And what most people don't know about Mira is actually she has gone through a divorce herself. And so today we're going to be talking a little bit about, she's graciously wanted to talk about a little bit about her experience and how the tools that she used to get through this painful part of her life, and how she had to shift her mindset and recreate herself and to be who she is now. So without further ado, Mira, it's good to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me, Lila. It's an honor, and thank you for asking me to have a chat on here, because there's a lot that I think we can share with each other and support other women around the world.
100%. And I think that I remember when I went through my own divorce, hearing stories of positivity and people coming out through the other side is exactly what I needed to hear all the time. Not the ones that, were in bad stories or going through a bad time that made me feel even worse. So I remember just listening to that, and also listening to what people have to say about what is it that they did? Like, what is some, there's always those golden nuggets inside of that, right? And I know that even reading through your book, it still helps me, because sometimes I'm like, oh, right, like, let me, give myself some time for myself. Let me just take this moment. Let me sip that tea. Let me really, be in the moment. Accept that maybe I'm not feeling fantastic about what I'm going through, and allow myself to feel that way. But tell me a little bit more about what inspired you to do this book. Also, in this book, like, what are the things that you used through your divorce that probably inspired you to write something so amazing for people? So
firstly, thank you for the praise. It's really amazing to hear you say that, and that you kind of go to it and flick through it and open it on a page and find a moment of, I guess, solitude, but also peace. And I feel like that's exactly what inspired me to write the book in a way. And I didn't want to focus on the divorce so much, even though I touch upon it in the introduction, simply because I feel like the tools that came out of it and the toolbox that I sort of accumulated as a result of it and realized the value of, and then wrote this book. I wanted it to be, and I realized that it's sort of like a transferable skill. You don't need to be going through a divorce, but these tools carry you through any painful process in life. So everyone will go through ups and downs. That's just the way life is. If you have the happiness and you have that sort of amazing feeling one day, that is because you felt the low before. And you can't always have the high, because there has to be a balance in everything in life. So actually how you go through it and how you tackle it and what tools you use to overcome it is really the way you glide through the ups and downs of life. And I think when you're going through something for the first time, and I have to say my divorce was probably the first crazy experience I've been through, and it was really crazy, and it lasted a very long time, and I didn't see it as a transformational process at the time. But when I look back at myself then and I look at myself now, right, I just know how different I am. And even the people who met me and the brink of sort of the time when I was about to get divorced, and I knew it was happening, but it took a very long time. And those friends who have stayed with me in just those 5 or 6 years till now, they see the biggest difference in me. And I think when I look at that, I think, wow, if I have transformed that much, obviously there's room for more transformation, but it also goes to show that the tools that I've used and counted on, that I've written about in the book, you know, whether that's the breath, which is something I always come back to, yoga, sunshine, you know, taking a short break and laughing with friends, just understanding the importance of all those things and not getting caught up in the day-to-day of life, so that we don't value the time that we get with our friends, don't value the time that we get with our family, don't value the sort of laughter, because all these things don't just have an important mental effect, they also have a physical effect on our body. And it's not just important for us to feel those things, it's important for us to feel those things because it puts us into a non-stress mode. And it's that stress mode that leads to health issues, that leads to mental health issues, that leads to eventually body issues. It all translates into each other. And I've learned that more and more and more, having studied sort of integrated health and having studied breath work, even after I wrote the book, actually. And the book itself brings together the tools that you can use to lift yourself from the painful experiences of life, but also if you start doing those things, whether it's like creating your own package, as it were, of tools, you can just feel, you can go through those sort of lonelier times, the more difficult times, or even the happier times with a slight more oomph in life. And I guess they connect you to yourself, and essentially that is a spiritual experience.
Well, it also gives you like a moment to pause, because the thing is that we're going in a locomotion, right? And it's like, and especially a downward spiral when it comes to something as tragic as divorce can be. Your life has shifted, your world has shifted around you, and you just don't feel settled, you don't feel grounded. So everything that you speak to is about getting back to a grounded state. Like sometimes I say, I just need to put my feet on the ground. I mean, like I literally say it to myself without even realizing that what I'm really saying is like, I don't feel grounded. I need to just stop and be in a moment, right? And I know it's really difficult to do when your heightened state is of stress and, you know, anxiety and everything that comes with, at this case, what we're talking about, divorce. And so I see it in my community, I see it with my clients, I see it in myself sometimes, and I'm, you know, I really have to make a conscious effort to say, oh, let me get grounded. And I love this idea of the more that we talk about finding those tools that work for you, finding that place that makes you happy and grounded, whether it is that sip of a tea or whether it is like, I mean, sometimes just even tapping yourself or whatever it, you know, whatever it is that you find is so important. And I think that there's a dance with it. I mean, you need to kind of, you need to find it, right? You need to find what it is that works for you. But I love the idea of like, let's test out a bunch of things, like anything in life, right?
Yeah, and so these are things that you might already be doing. They might be things that you have done on and off, but actually creating a habit and practice of these things. But that doesn't mean you have to be rigid about it. It's great to have a habit of doing that breath work in the morning. It's great to have a habit of, I don't know, waking up doing a bit of qigong, or whatever it is that puts you into that parasympathetic nervous system and lets you calm that anxiety down. But you know, you don't have to, if you have one day off, if you have 2 days off, if you have a week off, and if you want to switch it up and move on to something else and create a practice of something new, that's fine as well. You know, see what works for you. Don't be too rigid about it, because the last thing you want to do is give yourself any stress. And if you're stressing about like, oh God, I didn't do this today, I did this today, let it come with ease, go with the flow and try and enjoy the process as opposed to fighting with yourself to do something.
Exactly. And in fact, and this is the whole, I think this is, I mean, I struggle with this with breathing and breath work. I enjoy it so much when I do it. I do find it difficult to actually make the time for it. So now what I've done is just do little tidbits here and there. Like I don't have to make a big ritual about it. I don't have to sit down and spend like 20 or 30 minutes doing it. Sometimes it's just a 5-minute excerpt, like, okay, let me just take a breather. And I'll literally say it and then I'll do it. That's helped me a lot in that breath work, because I know how important it is. I mean, you read about it, you hear about it, you know, all the time. I guess you can't stress it enough, but breath work is, breathing itself is just so important.
Yeah, and we forget how important, how powerful the breath can be. You not only forget, but we may not know. And there's so much the breath can do to us, do for us. And just slowing the breath down and really inhaling and exhaling with intention and slowness and just calmness and listening to the breath can literally put you in a meditative state without you being like, oh my God, I need to meditate. Just 5 breaths before you eat, for example, can help you digest your food better, because actually if you're in a stressed state before you eat, you won't be able to digest that food. Like physically there are issues that happen. Yeah, you're basically being stressed, you're in fight or flight mode. So your body years ago would be in that state where you're like running away from a tiger, or running away from a lion, and it can't differentiate between being in a stress state from that or being in a stressed state because continuously you're going through something in life and you're stressed out. So actually trying, and therefore being in that stress state, your blood is flowing to you're basically being given the tools to run away from something,
right?
And your body is basically gearing up towards that. So it's not gearing up to digest something, it's actually moving energy away from that digestive process.
Right.
And there's a lot of science that's going on. There's lots of things that are going on in your body that are going to not help you digest. They're going to help you run away or do whatever it is that you need to escape from that issue or that that state that you're in. So actually eating in that state is really detrimental to the process of digestion. That's when you get bloating, that's when you get indigestion, that's when you get leaky gut and those sorts of things. So actually trying for 1 minute before you eat, just sitting down, closing your eyes and just taking a few deep breaths, that's all it takes, immediately will help you get into that parasympathetic. Hopefully it will do it fully, but at least it will do it in part, if not fully. And parasympathetic is the rest and relax system. So there are 2 nervous systems. There's the sympathetic, which is the rest, which is the one that where you're going to run away or being scared or whatever it is, and fear. And there's the rest and relax, which is the parasympathetic, which is the nervous system you need to be in to actually be able to function in life in a normal way and have your body functioning in a normal way.
That is absolutely so spot on and interesting to me, actually. And I've learned something new because I spent the better half, I think probably the first 4 years of my divorce with a bloated stomach. I found it really hard to digest. I found it really hard to probably just even eat. I was always in that state. And I find that a lot of people in my community say the same thing. They sit there and they struggle with the fact of trying to actually digest or eat, or it doesn't sit well, or they overeat because they feel like they're never full, but they're not even taking breaths in between, and they're not calming themselves. And like the power of that alone, just to do something like that before you start eating, is second to none. So do you have any advice of what kind of breath? Because everybody hears about that you breathe through your nose, out through your mouth. Do you breathe into your mouth, out through your mouth? Is there a specific breath that you think that is better to do before?
There are a lot of breaths that calm you down, and there are a lot of breaths that bring your mind to stillness. But the one that's just easy, so you know that you're going to get that state. Initially, it was just me. In yoga they say, do the ujjayi breath, which is sort of a wave-like sound, and you do it through the nostril, and you're able to hear it. That's sort of the breath that I used to do to get myself into sort of just that sort of. I didn't know all the mechanics of this. I just knew that when I was going through all of this, if I was on the brink or verge of tears or anger or whatever it was, I used to just really slow the breath down. Like the way I'm speaking right now, I'd be like. And the more silent you are, the slower the breath goes. So actually just be really silent about it and just breathe. And I do that ujjayi breath that we do in yoga. So I didn't know anything more than that. That's all I knew. I knew it just had an impact on me, and that's all I knew. And then I started studying the breath a bit more, and I started doing Kundalini yoga. And what I've realized over time, and people do say different things. So somebody's listening to this and they say, this is wrong. Well, it might be according to some people, but a lot of people say that in order to get yourself into that really relaxed state, you want to exhale for a little bit longer. And I think that really does work for me. So whatever it is, so if you generally if you breathe and you're like, that's about 2-3 seconds in, 2-3 seconds out. So rather than doing that, let's go to 5 seconds. So we breathe in for 5, maybe hold it for 1 or 2 seconds and then breathe out for 7. And then try and increase that for 7 to 9. So let's do 5 and 7. So hold it for a second and then breathe out. That was about 7 seconds. And do that maybe 3 times, and then increase it from 5 and 7 out to 7 in and 9 out, and see what you're comfortable with. You may not be able to do that, and if you are, do it. If you're not, just stick to 5 and 7. And that really just calms the system down immediately, almost. Like, just do it for a second and you'll feel it. You're basically, by doing this, telling your system, I'm okay, it's okay, everything's going to be okay.
Yeah, it's just, and you just feel it inside and everywhere. It calms your whole body down.
And there are, and I think that's just the best thing to start with. There are other breaths, of course there are. And there's, for example, first thing in the morning, something that I always talk about is, and it's brilliant, is inhaling through one nostril. Yeah. So using the air, and then holding it for a few seconds and exhaling. So do 5, hold for 3, or 5, 5, 5. That makes it really easy. And then increase that if you can. And do that whole thing. So and you'll feel what side of the nose is actually more dominant. You'll feel there might be a blockage in one or in the other, depending on the time of day. Sometimes one is blocked. And also it balances you. So it balances the masculine and feminine. It balances both sides of the brain. It balances the creative and the sort of more, I don't know, but anyway, it balances the whole body and the mind. And so it's a balancing breath. And I think that also calms the body down, the mind down, and it really sort of brings you to that parasympathetic nervous system that you want to be in the morning. So that's one breath that I like doing in the morning. The calming the breath down, you can do any time of day. Even if, when I used to find that breath really useful in situations where I didn't want to, like I just said, didn't want to start crying, get angry. And in front of anyone, the reason I talk about the slowing down and keeping silent is because I didn't want people to hear that I was breathing heavily. And then I realized actually being really silent about it means that other people don't know I'm doing this, but it also means that my breath is slower, because the more silent you go, the slower your breath. And actually that's amazing. But there are other breaths, like inhaling through your mouth and exhaling through your nose, through pursed lips is another one that really stills the mind. So just so there's lots. I mean, I'm not going to go into all of them, but that's another one that really, really stills the mind. Now, that's not something I used for the last 5 years, but since I've done breathwork courses and things, I've picked up those other breaths that, again, really help you to completely still the mind. And you just use these breaths as and when you need them. Taking anger out, for example, getting into your cobra pose, which is amazing. I love that pose. And then taking your tongue out and going, and that's amazing. You literally feel like you're spitting out anger. You're literally churning it out. It's brilliant. So there's so many different things that you can use to get these things out of your system.
I love the anger, getting out the anger pose. I know that some people might not do yoga and they might not know what cobra pose is. Yeah, but I know, but it's, I mean, that though breath, it doesn't necessarily, if you can't go into cobra, or if you don't know what cobra is, that breath can actually be done even if you're just sitting there.
Yeah, you can just sit there and do it.
In a stance, and it's just having a strong stance and doing it because you're trying to get into that tiger, like that mode, right? That you're getting.
And your intention, have the intention there to actually chuck it out, and you're like, imagine and visualize. The other thing is visualizing these things before you do them. So if you're doing that, I know it looks a bit gross, but like literally your tongue is out. Like visualize that you're like chucking the anger out. You're literally throwing out, spewing out anything that you're just. And then you're like, you're completely rid of it for the day. Well, hopefully it will at least get rid of some of that toxic energy that's inside you.
This is so important. And I'll say that because, and I feel that this is such an important point to especially my community, that when you're going through something like divorce and you have an opposing part, and sometimes that can get very ugly and very nasty, I think that having a way of releasing and not letting that seep inside of you, the words that have been said, you feel wronged, you feel misunderstood. There's so many feelings that come up for you, and just to like release it and let it go is super, super important. And I love that notion. And in fact, I actually do use something very similar now in regards to that. So if I do hear something that really, I'm like, I'm not going to accept that. I'm going to release it, and I'm going to do that breath. And now I'm going to actually use that cobra pose. Instead, I was not doing that, but now I'm going to use that because I love that, because it's such a powerful stance on saying, I'm protecting myself. I'm not accepting that. I won't accept those words. I won't accept that anger. I won't accept that pain. Do you know what I mean? You're protecting yourself in such a way.
And actually that reminds me of the affirmations. That's something else I speak about in the book. And affirmations are great. I mean, you were just saying that I don't accept this, and actually those things, saying them out loud, can become your affirmations to really enact those things, manifest those things. So, you know, I am okay. I am, you know, I love, honor, and respect myself, whatever it is, you know, saying an affirmation to yourself. You know, if you're trying to manifest, I don't know, money in your business, or, you know, good fortune, you can be doing an affirmation about that, or going through a divorce and going through a horrific process. I know I'm okay. Like, do it in the present moment as if you are okay, and that manifesting in the present moment will channel those things into your system and drive those things into your system, so that when you go out into the world after that, those things will hopefully manifest themselves over time.
Oh yes, I mean, I'm a strong believer in that, and I realize that I mean, what we think is really what happens around us, right? And if we're thinking the bad thoughts, if we're thinking that the truth is what somebody's thrown at us or said to us, I mean, I remember even reading the lawyer letters and going, oh my God. And it took me so long, you know, to just figure out that actually it's so not true. This is just a manifesto of lawyers, you know, showing their guns and showing what they've got and how they've been schooled basically in their language. And I took me a while to protect myself from that and saying that that's not true. And I'm not going to accept it. That's not the truth. I know the truth. I know the truth. And that's another thing that I said a lot of when I was going through a divorce. I know the truth. I know my truth. I know my truth. I know my truth. And another thing that really reminded me what you were saying was that I read a lot of Joe Dispenza, and he talks a lot about this, and he's a neurological scientist, and he talks about how important it is that we're living our truth. So what we want, we should already be living essentially in our brain, in our minds, in our hearts, you know? So when we're living it already, it's happening. Essentially, if it's so not happening. So exactly to what you said and to your point.
It's hard to believe those things when, you know, you're saying them and they're not happening, but you've just got to believe that they will happen, and you've got to believe they are happening. You've got to believe that something in your body's makeup, in your mind's makeup, in the energy around you is changing and shifting by you saying those things. But none of this makes the process easier. And I'm not saying that, you know, one day I might have woken up during that whole process and been like, okay, I can't do anything today, I need to lie down and have a drink. Or, you know, spinning usually, you know, spinning really got my sort of endorphins going. And at the time I didn't know what endorphins meant, but obviously now I know I turn to things like spinning, or I didn't run at the time, but running is another thing that kind of gets all that serotonin and endorphins flowing. So those are all your happy hormones. Those are the hormones that you want to be flowing in your body. So actually you're using, with breath work, with spinning, with running, with all these things, you're using your physiology to change your psychology. And that's another thing we spoke about.
Right. I love that, because in fact, I now ritually every morning I have to go jump on my trampoline. I have a little bit mini trampoline in the house. It's ugly as hell. It's ugly as hell, but I'm like, I don't care. It's sitting in the living room. It's like, listen, I need to get my blood pumping and my blood flowing and get ready for it. Even if it's 5 minutes, I'm just giving myself a little bit of that because of the situation we're in right now. Let's face it. So, you know, it has been really challenging. And I'm like, if I don't do that, I don't face the day right. And even if I don't have time for it, I'm rushing or I'm late, I'll make at least 5 minutes of time to do something like that, just to get that blood flowing. And it really does help. It really helps. So.
Absolutely. I think a bit of movement gets all that sort of blood flowing, the serotonin. You don't know what's happening in the body's mechanics by doing all these things, but you will be able to feel the rush of energy, the rush of sudden, oh my God, I feel like a sudden sort of dance to life, or whatever it is. It's like that, you know, seeing the sun in the morning.
Right.
But actually by doing these things, you're creating the energy that the sun gives you in a way.
So true. It is so true. In fact, because people say, well, yeah, sun is great, but what if you don't get the sun and it's gray outside and this and that? It's like, well, there are ways, you're right. There are ways that, you know, even going out in fresh air, it doesn't matter if there's no sun. It's just great to be out there. Just breathe, breathe in the air, you know, sometimes it's like, I don't know, taking you outside of something that you're in, just a body shift even just helps. It just helps change your mind shift in some way or the other. And
Yeah.
speaking of that, that's something that I wanted to talk to you about, because I know we had spoken about this earlier. It's like, all right, so you go through a divorce, your identity as a married woman, in your case, is taken from you. You're like, kind of like, okay, now I'm not that anymore. Now I'm finding myself and I have to reinvent myself in a different way. And it's like, okay, so what was your journey through that? Oh, I think I lost you. Oh, there you are.
I think I might need to go and get a charger in a minute. My journey to understanding losing my identity, yeah, that was a big one actually. And I think there's a lot you have to deal with when you're going through a divorce. It's not just that sort of separation from somebody, or there's a lot to deal with. It's a grieving process, and it's a grieving process of your identity. It's a grieving process of so many things. You know, if you have a child, it's a very different type of experience, and worse in many ways. But at the same time, with me, it was almost like, people compare it to death, and I think it's I completely resonate with that.
Yeah.
Because there was a complete cutoff, like no contact whatsoever, and for various reasons, and it literally felt like this person just stopped existing in life completely. This person who I'd be, you know, just anything, I would just rely on that person for anything, and my identity was very much linked to that. I didn't do any of this then, and I didn't know what I was going to do afterwards. I was like completely lost, unsure of what was next, trying not to think about the future, just focusing on the now, but not able to really do that. I mean, we say all these things, but it's hard to put them into practice when you're in the situation itself.
Yeah.
And at the time, yes, maybe I have that element of spirituality, maybe I have that, but I didn't kind of have the confidence or the ability to have faith in what was about to happen being good for me that I have now. You know, I look back now and I can write about all the experiences. I'm so glad I went through something to create the person I am today. But at the time, I had no idea. You know, it's an unknown. You're going into a field of complete unknown. You don't think of it as possibilities, although it is a whole world of possibility. You don't think of it as possibilities because you don't know that you're even capable of doing anything next. Because you know that you relied on this person, and this life that you lived was created by that.
And the idea of it too, like you had the future already planned out with this kind of life that you were.
It's dangerous to actually, because, you know, yes, you know, I think we were maybe of a generation where we were on that brink or cusp of women's empowerment, but not really at the time. And people, you know, women started working, but also I came from a family which was a little bit more traditional, and the man takes, you know, charge in a way or looks after you. And I just completely went onto that ideology, even though I'd studied and went to university and done postgraduate. But I married way too early, and I got caught up in the fact that, oh yes, the husband looks after everything, you know, that sort of thing. Right. And I think that's a very dangerous thing to, right now, especially in this day and age, I wouldn't recommend that for anyone.
Right. Well, that's a great advice.
But yeah, I mean, but at that time, I think a lot of women did go into marriage thinking that, and that completely debilitates you when something like this happens. Completely.
I know. It's a very hard place to come back from. But it's a great place to go to. And this is the thing that I always say, I was like, there's such great lessons in all of that, because you find your voice, you find your identity, and nothing is better than that. I mean, nothing is better than being who you are and who you're supposed to be. Not for somebody else, not for a role play, not for your family, not for your friends. It's like who you want to be. You find yourself, your light, your shining star. Like there's nothing better. It's just, it's hard to let go of those ideologies, those thoughts, what your traditions, what your family's taught you, what you've seen growing up all your life, what, you know, other society tells you. Like, there's so many things that are fed to us all our lives. And then all of a sudden, like, a time comes where we're faced abruptly that we need to just go, oh my God, I've got to look at it a different way. And here we go down another path. But testament, and you're a testament, I'm a testament, so many people I know are testament to what a better place you get to. I mean, what a better place.
And, yeah, how do you think of that as a world of possibilities as opposed to a world of unknown fear? And also, I think you think, how do you get rid of that mentality? It's very important to do this, to not think of the should haves, because there's so many should haves. You know, I should have not got married at that time. I should have listened to that guy's thing. I should have, but actually, no, let's get rid of that voice, because that voice will only hinder you from moving forward. Because actually, there was a reason. You will, in 5 years' time, in 2 years' time, in 3 years' time, whenever it is, you will find that actually, I went through this process for a reason. And just trust in the fact that it's going to lead you somewhere better.
I love what you just said. I absolutely love it. In fact, I think this is the golden nugget as well, that I say. It's like, so many people are so angry at themselves for being in this position of separation or divorce. And I say to them, listen, everything does happen for a reason. And I know you can't go back in time. Whatever happened, and it's going to make you who you are. And that's the beauty of it. You don't see it yet, but I swear once you're there, then you look back and go, like you said, now I can look back and say, wow, all of that has made me who I am, and what I learned from it, and what I can to teach other people, which is so important. I mean, look, it doesn't take away from how difficult it is, because it is difficult, and it's a difficult process. It's not easy. They're step-by-steps. You have to take them in baby steps. You can't look at it all in one go. You have to just do the little work that you can, right? Like you said, to your point, it's like, if you don't feel like doing it, don't do it in that day. If you don't feel like doing the rituals, you don't do the rituals. If you don't feel like the breath work, you don't do it. You make those choices, but you've got to do baby steps, step by step, of how you change your mind, how you change your outlook, how you change your confidence,
And that's exactly what I'm talking about. I think you hit the nail on the head when you said baby steps, because actually it is taking each day at a time. So think how I used to think of it. And I remember this very clearly, and thinking every single day in the morning, okay, what can I do today to create a little bit of, you know, what will make me happy? Okay, I'll meet with a friend. Let me message a friend and see if I can meet with her for a coffee. And I was in Dubai at the time, so I didn't really have that many friends. I have to say, I was a bit alone there. So like, I think of that, or I think of, okay, I'm going to go to that place. Like, I'm going to go to the Palace Hotel, because I know I really like sitting outside in the sun when I'm there. So let me go and sit there in the sun, and I'll have a drink out in, you know, after my spinning class. And I'll go into the mall, because I know that going into the mall and having a frozen yogurt will make me happy. So even just the small thing of having a frozen yogurt, or just knowing that, okay, today I'm going to do this because I know that will make me happy. And that may not carry out throughout the day, but it will, those little moments will provide moments of happiness, which will create few moments of happiness, if nothing else.
And in fact, but then they add up, because it gets you out of that spiral, and the downward spiral, which everybody is capable of doing, every single person, where you go down and it's like, you don't feel well, you feel sad, you feel this, you start thinking all the negative thoughts, and you don't do anything for yourself to pick yourself back up again, then you're down there, and it's harder to get back up. So even if you have little tidbits of moments that you're like, let me just do something good for myself, or let me do something that makes me happy, or let me, you know, this makes me happy, or hearing my mom's voice, or hearing this person's voice, or whatever it is. I mean, for me, I know, you know, I relied on my brother a lot. And although, let's face it, I mean, my brother, I don't have a sister, unfortunately. And I know that, you know, brothers are great, but they're not very emotional. And, you know, if he found it really hard, but he was there for me, just having his voice at the end of the phone, listening to me was enough, right? And it was comforting. It was like, okay, it was a reminder. You're not on your own. You're not on this journey alone. You know, you've got people around you. You've got people who love you, because you can often forget when you're in that influx of anxiety and stress and sadness and all of that. So
yeah, absolutely. And
yeah,
it's completely, and looking at people who have gone through it, like you said, it was success stories that
yeah,
drove you and helped you realize that there is light at the end of the tunnel. I think that's really important. And also not to get caught up in the whole thing of, oh, but they don't really understand what I've been through, because every single person who's been through it has had their own really difficult story and has not been able to see that light at the end of the tunnel for a while.
100%. I agree with you. And in fact, you're right. Every story is different. Every story is different. But the emotions, they might get them at a different point of their journey, but everyone faces them. Everyone feels them. I know people who have chosen to divorce, have left their ex, but yet at the same time go through all those emotions. Even though they wanted it, they want that outcome, they are still going through those emotions because it's a change. It's a change for life. They mourn the life they were supposed to have or they thought they were going to have, and they mourn what's going inside of them or losing a companion. So there's so many different things. So everyone goes different emotions, but everyone hits them, up and down, up and down. So
yeah, absolutely.
But hearing that success stories, I do agree. And this is why I want to provide it for my community, anybody who listens. I think the more you hear those, the more you're like, oh, this is great. And like I always say, it's planting the seeds, right? It's like out of this conversation, someone's going to listen and something is going to resonate and they're going to start doing that one thing. So it's planting that seed, or they're going to remember it down the line. Maybe they're not ready to hear it now, but it's going to resonate with them later on and say, oh, that's what it means. Yes.
Yeah.
Even that breathing right before you eat, how important is that? I mean, God, I honestly, literally, I'm going to start doing that now. Me, after years of it, because it's so interesting. And often, listen, I might not be going through my divorce, but there's a lot of things that challenge me, i.e. COVID, i.e. still co-parenting, i.e. there's so many other things that, that can get me anxious or nervous or whatever it is. And I will go to dinner or I will go to eating my lunch in that state. And that is not good. So that is such a golden nugget for me. That's my takeaway. So
yeah, no, I think there's so much truth in picking up whatever it is that works for you and actually don't think of it as ritual. Don't think of it as something that you're trying. Just listen to your gut and just go with it and try new things. For me, it might have been yoga, but maybe yoga doesn't work for you. Find whatever it is do some sort of physical activity, because that gets the endorphins going, it gets the blood moving. You kind of need that. And also with your body, you want to feel good in your body, because there are certain things you can control. And eating, for example, for me, that was a massive thing. That always has been a massive thing, being able to know what I'm putting in my mouth, because if I don't, then I'll start hating myself, because I'll start overeating, because I have a tendency to overeat. So those sorts of things, understand what it is that you need in order to make yourself feel even just a little bit better, because there are different things that trigger different people.
Well, I mean, and this is something that I also, in regards to even both of your books, I think that this is something that's really important. Health through all of this, obviously, is not just about exercising and the stress levels and getting yourself into a calm state, but it's what you're putting in your body as well. And so a lot of people, tend to, and I definitely had my rows with that, is that let's go just have a drink, or let's go, I don't know, eat some ice cream, a bucket of ice cream, or let's go eat a kilo of chocolate because that's going to make me feel better. And we go out to try to eat these things that we know ultimately aren't going to make us feel better in the end, but we feel like that little satisfaction. And I'm not saying don't have that piece of chocolate, because I am all for a piece of chocolate and, having a drink. I'm all for that too. I'm not saying that you don't need to do that, but what you're putting in your body is very important. And it really does affect what you're eating. If you're not getting enough vegetables, if you're not getting enough warm food, if you're not getting soothing food, and even turmeric and all these things that really are anti-inflammatory, really good, that they're helping with everything else that you're trying to do to get through something that's so difficult. Right?
Yeah.
And that's something that's in the book as well. And so these are things that are also important for people, just to find their rhythm with that, their rhythm with eating something that's equally as good for you, not just like an instant satisfaction, but equally as good for you to will last, will give them energy, will make them feel soothed, you know? So, and having that amazing tea and having that chai, God, I can't wait till I get my chai from you. But I mean, chai is so, I love it. You know, I love it. Not for everyone, but
Cooking with spices helps with every single element of digestion. You know, all the spices have their benefits, not just in flavor. I mean, they really do ramp up the flavor as well, but they also are great for digestion. So drinking things with spices in them, i.e. chai, is great because it helps. It's warming. It releases also good hormones. I mean, it's just great for the body. It's just great for the digestion. Everything really comes back to the digestion. How we digest in our body is how we digest life. So
I so agree. And it's so true. And I mean, I really suffered with my digestion for years during my divorce. And really I was thinking what I was eating, but actually it was a combination of so many things. It was my stress levels, my lack of sleep, my anxiety, my lack of movement, I mean, it was 101 things. So combined.
And
so
supplements are also very important. Supplements are really important because we don't get everything we need from our food. I know people say that let's just rely on food, but it doesn't work that way because we don't live in a time and an era where we're plucking things from the ground, eating them straight away, where we're getting all the nutrients that are packed in these foods immediately. We're actually losing a lot of that by the time that is involved between the time that it's picked and the time it enters our stomachs and our mouths. So actually we do need to supplement that. You know, we all have very different and varied diets, but we are missing out on certain things. So looking up what might help you, you know, whether it's zinc or B vitamins or B12 or vitamin D, all these things are very, very important. And especially when you're going through something, looking at vitamins that actually will help those processes and digestion, whatever it is, you know, vitamin B is such an important, like they're all very important, of course, but, you know, lacking in vitamin D would also not help with your mental state as well.
I agree. It's so good for your stress levels. And like to your point where if you need the sun and if you can't get the sun and you go out and, you know, get fresh air is fine, but vitamin D is even more important if you're somewhere that doesn't.
Yeah, and if you're high or like if you're actually really going through stress, then your adrenals will be playing up. So you'll have high cortisol levels. So you want something that will calm that cortisol, that will calm the adrenals. So looking up things that will calm that. There are so many things, herbal, non-herbal, that will just help you to really calm that, those cortisol levels. And that's why we want to do things and practices that are not just let's go spinning and stuff, that will actually calm the system. So whether it's qigong or whether it's an activity whether it's yoga, whatever it is, those sorts of activities will help to release the stress in the system rather than ramp it up.
I agree. This is great.
I know I keep going on about activities, but I feel like it's the one thing you can actually, like what we're saying, you know, going back to that whole physiology, using the physiology, using body to actually change the mind, the psychology.
I mean, mind and body, it's completely connected. You know, there is no disconnection. And it's so, I don't know. It's interesting because I say this to my daughter sometimes when she's really angry and you can tell, like, she can't get it out in words. She's frustrated or she doesn't want to talk about it, or she doesn't even have the vocabulary to even express herself in that way right now. You know, she's 11. But she can just jump up and down. I say to her, I was like, dude, just jump up and down. And she laughs at me. And then by laughing at me even, I was like, look, you're even getting it out. I was like, just jump up and down. I'm telling you, once you jump up and down, your body is releasing something. And she'll do it, but she is laughing at me and that is helping her. But at the same time, but she realized that when she does move her body, it helps, you know? And it's like even when the onset of the COVID saga came on and, you know, homeschooling was, you know, introduced and all of us were just stuck at home. It was like, all of us realized how desperate we were to move our body.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now that we realized that we couldn't as much, like that was taken from us, that our day-to-day was taken from us, we couldn't go to the gym, or we couldn't go here, or even if we didn't go to the gym before, all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, I need to move my body. It was like, what is going to help me? And you'll see people going out, walking that they've never gone out and walked before because they realized how important it was. Their body was talking, like their body needed it. Their mind needed it. So their body needed it. So
yeah.
So my daughter started jumping on the trampoline too, because she's like, oh my God, I'm going to join you, Mom, because the frustrations were there. It's like, you know, just even 5-10 minutes. So I know you go on about it, but I think it's really important. And I'm glad. I'm hoping that, you know, if people don't incorporate that in their day-to-day, I think, and I hope that they will start, because it is super helpful when you're going through something as devastating as divorce or any other grief, or even COVID. So, because we're all going through that.
Absolutely. I mean, sleep and digestion and the way we absorb the nutrients in our food, and just, you know, the activity and movement, just having your anchors every day that will bring you
Right.
an element of that, those things, you know, make sure that your sleep is good. How do you do that? Make sure that your stress levels are not high during the day. Make sure you eat well, and make sure you move. So all those things are really important, and regardless of what you're going through, they're important.
Well, this has been such an amazing chat, honestly. I mean, I could talk to you for hours, as we know.
Me
And
too. It was amazing.
I love you say, if for those of you who don't follow Mira on Instagram, you definitely should. Can you tell everyone your 2 IG accounts, which are amazing and very informative? So
Thank you. It's at Mira Manek, at MIRA MANEK, and at Chai by Mira. Chai meaning chai, the drink chai, CHAI by BYMIRA. So yeah, I sell the chai online, and we're introducing and launching lots of new flavors like cocoa chai, matcha chai, golden chai with turmeric, cinnamon chai. So launching all of that soon. I'm working on that right now. And yeah, I think it's a really delicious chai, so go online and get it. But yeah, that's where you'll find me. I also put up lots about Ayurveda and just my general practices, and food. Food is like one of my main things. So I put lots of recipes up and teach lots of classes.
I mean, watch her videos are amazing. I've learned so many yummy tidbits of what I can make, because I got kind of flat out. In fact, every day I was like, what am I going to make now? I mean, thank God for you and explaining some of the different things, different flavors I just forget to even use. So it was, yes, I love it. Everyone, I love this chat. This was great. And very
Me too. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for joining. Thank you so much.
Amazing that you're creating such an incredible community, because I feel like, you know, if I had something like this at the time, I would have leaned very, very strongly on it.
You know, and that's why I've created it, because at the time I was going through it like you, I did not have that, and I didn't have access to it. I had my amazing friends and family, of course, just like you. But at the end of the day, a community of people who are going through it together, and who understand or who have gone through it, and access to that is second to none. So
exactly, creating a new community sometimes is all you need, and opening up the community and meeting other people, because you feel like you've come from a world of isolation almost, and you're going out into a world which you don't know anything about, and people that you know may not have been through it. Like for me, none of my friends have been through divorce, because I got married very early. They were all about to get married, or had just got married when I was going through my divorce, and I didn't know anyone. So I was like, oh my God, how do I firstly meet other people who are going through this and know more about it, but also how do I make new friends, because I've just moved back to London where all my friends have just gone and got married. You know, what do I do with myself?
Right.
So,
and in fact, and that's the thing. And especially when you're going through something like this, you really do. I mean, it's something to be said by having people who also have gone through it or going through it, because there is just an understanding. I mean, I had, you know, through my friends, a lot of pity in their eyes. Poor them, like they just felt bad for me. So did my family. So it was, you know, and you, rather than pity, you just want somebody who's like in the trenches with you, got it, understands it, is there with you, is going through it or has gone through it. And just stories like this, like, you know, you come out through the other side a better person, like amazing person. I mean, look who you are, look what you've created, look what you've done for yourself. Like, wow. I mean, you know, which might have not been your path had you stayed in a marriage. So here we are. And we get to
thank you. That's really kind. And look at you as well. I mean, you know, it's amazing to be surrounded by people you admire, and that's exactly what this is about, as women supporting women.
I 100%.
But thank you very, very much again. Lots of love, and sending you love in LA, and speak to you.